Welcome everybody to our first meeting for the Transportation Connectivity Working Group. And my hope for tonight is basically twofold: that we kind of organize ourselves and agree on how we're going to work together to get our work done, and then finish item 8, which is Walter's specific work product ask for us to present at the next meeting on the 23rd. So those are my two simple overall goals. And let's begin by introducing ourselves briefly, telling folks our name, what our association is that put us on the task force, and any special interest we have in transportation. And let's try to keep it each individual introduction to about a minute or less. So I'm John Mooney. Walter's asked me to chair this. We're going to expand the leadership a bit, as I will explain in a moment. Anyway, I've worked 27 years in local government management, and I've retired, and now I'm on the Reston Association Board of Directors. And as a local government manager, I am not a transportation professional, but I've had the benefit of working with some great ones over the years. So that's why I'm here on this particular work group. Thanks. Anybody can jump in any order here.
John and everyone, I'm Burton Griffith. I am representing Mediterranean Villa Cluster on the task force. I'm the president of the cluster board. I'm also the former chairman of RA's Pedestrian and Bicycling Advisory Committee, the predecessor of the MTAC. And I'm an avid biker and walker, and I've lived in North Reston since 2007.
Thanks, Burton.
Hi, this is Jennifer Juszczyk. Sorry for whoever I just interrupted. I'm on the task force affiliated with the SOS group, live in the South Lakes District of Reston. I do not have any specialties when it comes to a lot of the workings of this subgroup, which is, as you kind of heard me on the task force meeting the other night say the same thing. But I am an avid reader of documents. My skills really come to the thoroughness of when we actually put pen to paper, and I think that's really mostly how I can help here.
Thanks, Jennifer.
I'll jump in. My name's David Gill. I'm a land use attorney with the law firm of Wire Gill, and I've been practicing for 15 years in primarily Fairfax County. I served on the prior version of the task force, and actually a somewhat neighbor of Bill. Bill Penniman, live off Upper Lake Drive, and was a planner before I went to law school. So live and eat and breathe this stuff, and excited to be figuring out some solutions for our community.
Thank you, David. And let me point out that I had suggested to Jose, that Jose suggest to Walter that someone had suggested to me, which made sense, and so I passed it on to Walter's office, that we actually have a co-chair of this committee besides myself. If I'm unable to be there, I don't want to work the workflow. And Walter thought it was a good idea, and he asked David to serve as the co-chair. So welcome, David. We look forward to teaming up with you on that.
Hopefully we won't have to exercise the 19th Amendment or anything here, John. I'm going to let you do most of the heavy lifting. So.
Okay, but it's good to have you.
Sticking with that theme, then I'll jump in. I'm Mark Looney. I'm a land use and zoning attorney with Cooley. Our offices are in the Reston Town Center, and I've been working on projects in Reston for more than 20 years at this point, and I'm ably assisted tonight by an 8th grader and a 3rd grader who will occasionally pop into the background. So they're my assistants in this endeavor.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jan Bradshaw, and I am here because of Southgate Community Center Advisory Council. I was there since the inception when it was just an idea, and then the building was built, and then we hired our first director and worked the plans, and we are here now. So it was fascinating. It is fascinating how it's grown. I actually developed a course in urban sociology when I was in college, and then the teacher, professor, he taught it, and I attended the class. So that was a pretty easy class. I've always been fascinated by urban development. I've also been in the Neighborhood Coalition. I've been in RCA. I've been in most of the alphabet soup groups that you could think of. And but I am fascinated about the idea of helping us move around in Reston. Right now, the people don't want to go over the north, doesn't want to come to south. South doesn't really want to come to north because it's just too darn hard, unless they have to. So I'd like to be part of some of the changes that we might be able to make that easier.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
John, I'm Gary Maupin. I'm the Ruston Town Center kind of rep, so to speak, on the task force. And I'm on the Ruston Transportation Service District Advisory Board, along with John Mooney. And we actually happened to meet last night. So I've been in Ruston about 6.5 years, and before that in Fairfax County since 1951.
Thanks.
This is Bill Penniman. I'll fill the gap. I'm on the Reston Community Center Board of Governors, which got me involved here. I was involved in the task force the last time around and spent a lot of time mainly focusing on the Wheelie area. But I learned a lot about transportation and have at least some vision of what it'll take to make it a livable, walkable place linked to the rest of Reston.
Thanks, Bill.
I'll go next. David Vanell. I'm here from the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee. I've been there for quite a number of years, more than I care to count. And prior to that, I was, well, actually during that, I spent a lot of years as a Foreign Service officer, and then after I retired as a contractor with Foreign Service. And I'm particularly interested in transportation issues with Reston. I will have to say that in my time with P&Z, my impression is that traffic engineers speak in tongues, and it's really difficult to discern how they come to their conclusions. But I'm looking forward to trying to help out here.
Thank you, David.
I'll go next. This is Lynn Molston. I serve as the Vice President of the Reston Citizens Association and have been with RCA since 2015, when I think I probably really became an activist in the local community. And I also serve as chair of the North Course Committee for Rescue Reston. And have been doing that since 2017. And I'm here because of the infamous road from nowhere. And I stress it's the road from nowhere, not the road to nowhere. And have been working to try and get the road from nowhere removed from the conceptual grid of streets for going on 3 years now, I think. But that's the reason I'm here. And thank you so much for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lynn. Is John Carter here? Okay, hopefully John can join us shortly. He helped very much prepare for the meeting. I want at this time to acknowledge all the good folks from Fairfax County staff who are here to support us, to Lisa Connors, who's our technical producer tonight. Jose Del Cid is here, from Walter's office. Shamli Hout is here from Walter's office, and from planning, I guess St. Clair Williams rather is here, and from the Fairfax County DOT, we have John King, who's our fixed liaison for this working group, and also tonight Jeff Herman. Have I missed anyone on staff?
I think you got it covered.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. So the first item on the agenda is approval of tonight's agenda, but before I ask for a motion on that, I want to explain once more, though I did it in writing, why I have such a detailed agenda. And it is not to predetermine any outcomes.
There it is.
I beg your pardon. There's John Carter. John, welcome.
I'm in. Okay.
John, do you want to say anything? Everybody's introduced himself. Do you want to say anything about yourself? I think everybody knows you, but.
So I'm the Hunter Mill Planning Commissioner. I suppose my expertise in this, I've probably worked on about 30 master plans where we balance the land use with the transportation. And then probably some expertise in design issues that overlap with transportation. So that's me.
And we're glad to have you, John.
Okay, thank you.
So we're now on item 2, and before asking for a vote on approving or disapproving tonight's agenda, I just wanted to say again, I said it in writing, but very briefly, the reason for the detailed agenda for tonight, it's our first meeting, and I want us to get off to a solid start. My goal is not to predetermine any outcomes or squelch discussion, but to gather information that I think might be useful to the working group, and to suggest to the working group an orderly sequence that we can go through in our meetings that allows us to get our work done as thoroughly as possible without wasting anybody's time, because everybody on this group is busy. And I believe in a whole part whole approach to analysis, that you look at the whole, and then you look at the parts, and then you look at the whole again, putting together the parts which you've analyzed more fully. So that's why we have the agenda we have tonight. I highlighted in yellow the things that I think are most important, but it is all geared in my own mind to getting us to complete item number 8, which is what Walter asked us to present to him on November 23rd. So that's the, yes, ma'am.
I would like to move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Okay, thank you.
I second that. This is Burton.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. So the third point, and I hope this will not need to be a long discussion. What I'm proposing, based on the nature of work we're doing and my experience in many other groups, that I think we should aim for a substantial substantial consensus on major items, noting minority opinions if necessary. But I think we want to avoid mere votes, where people can feel overwhelmed by a majority without having their opinions preserved in any way. So, does that make sense to folks? I'd welcome your conversations on this. So, if somebody wants to make a motion, and then we could have a discussion.
I'll make a motion that we agree to that, John. Sounds like a great approach.
Could you state the motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we agree with John's approach on number 3 to the decision process in this group.
Is there a second? Okay, so there's no second.
Burton, I second that.
Okay, Burton. Any discussion? And if people have misgivings about this, let's hear it. We don't want groupthink. Okay, if there's no discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you for that. So, fourthly, I want to note the proposed support we have for our work group. As I said, John King is the person from Fairfax County DOT who's been assigned to be our liaison for this. Mike McDermott is the chair of the Reston multimodal transportation advisory committee, MTAC, and so he's an advisor. And I mentioned that we have on MTAC, we're very lucky to have two transportation professionals. Scott Leary is a transportation engineer, and Nigel Anstel is a transportation planner with significant experience in England and here in the United States. And so I would like us to be able to, and they volunteered to help us in any way we want them to. They won't lead the discussion, but they're willing to do any work we ask them to do. So I would myself be very grateful if we could accept that offer of help. And then the idea is that between John Carter, John King, Mike McDermott, and others, including those on the committee here, many of whom have significant experience in land use planning and transportation planning, to suggest any read-ahead information that would help us in our deliberations here in the working group meetings. So it's ideal if we can be prepared and really get into substantive discussion here. So is it acceptable to make use of these offers of support? Or some of them are assigned, others are offered.
I think that it's acceptable to accept these offers of support, with the caveat that this group is going to be leading this initiative, and that this is not a staff-led initiative. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. It is our task, not theirs. Is there
John, this is David Vanell. I'm wondering, I think that's wonderful that they want to help out and all that stuff. And I'm wondering about read-ahead material. Is the material from MTAC something that we can receive and absorb, or would it be a good idea to have some representation of that on screen to explain the results, explain the methodology and all that?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. In fact, David, I already have a draft of the various studies that MTAC has done. For example, Reston by foot and bike, ROFAB, you may have heard of it. They've also done annual surveys of RNAG about how that's coming along. So that's the sort of thing that they do on a routine basis, is monitor those things. So, I will give it as a read ahead, and if anyone wants more information or a presentation during the meeting of those, they would be, I'm sure, very happy to do so. Is that responsive to your question, David?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to accept these offers of help. Again, as Lynn said, it is the working group's task to do this, but we welcome help from any quarter that can help us do our work more thoroughly and efficiently, is my view.
So moved.
Favor.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed or any abstentions? Okay, thank you for that. And now we move to number 5, which is my understanding. And Jose, are you still with us, Jose?
No, Jose's not on anymore. He had to go to his other meeting.
Say that again?
Jose's not on any longer. He had to go to his other meeting.
Okay. Well, he's reviewed this and found it okay, but I wanted to invite him to comment on it. So it's an overview of what I've understood Supervisor Alcorn to expect from us in terms of work products from our work group. I've listed here A, B, C, D, E, and my thought is that if we have a good discussion on these points, this will almost give us a finished version of what we want to say in number 8, which is the report that Supervisor Alcorn requested for the full task force's November 23rd meeting. So that's my hope. So let's start with A, and it may sound strange, but I call it the TCWG's name, scope, and focus. So as we all know from participating in the last task force meeting, that there was a movement to call it not just a transportation group, but a transportation connectivity group. And in fact, as I've discussed more with people who are transportation professionals, the word mobility is the broader word mobility is gaining favor instead of transportation. So the idea is to allow people to be mobile in whatever mode that is, whether it be by private vehicle, by public transit, walking, biking, whatever. So we may want to change that, but it's significant that our name, at least currently, is transportation connectivity. In my work doc number 1, I listed 4 major sources of information relevant to our task. One is, and the first one is Walter's January 14th authorization motion, where he explicitly listed 3 things: the adequacy of existing and planned pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure for accessing the Silver Line stations. Secondly, the adequacy of existing comprehensive plan guidance to facilitate urban scale mobility and development design in the TSAs while protecting the stability of nearby neighborhoods. And thirdly, existing comprehensive plan transportation improvement to ensure that they are aligned with plan development. So John King is the one who suggested that we have that as one of the major inputs to what we formulate in terms of our plan. And he has some more specific things that we will bring up before next meeting, how we deal with those. The second one is, as you know, we have our list of Reston study topic areas that we've discussed, especially in the early days, the early months of our work together as a task force. And I've listed them in short form in my work doc number 1, and have indicated 4 especially that seem especially important for us to look at and incorporate in our work as a task force, and that is mobility and transportation design, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, transportation improvements, and a comprehensive plan development monitoring adjustment mechanism. So as they do in other places in the county, notably in Tyson's Corner, they monitor what's happening with development and the ensuing traffic to know how they have to modify their transportation system. The third source is the Reston Network Analysis and its companion funding piece, the Reston Funding Plan Draft Cash Flow. And I've summarized all of these in that work doc number 1. I won't go into it. And the fourth thing is, of course, the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan itself. And there are various parts to it: the policy plan, the various area plans, and Reston's comprehensive plan is part of one of the area plans, and the comprehensive plan maps. And then finally, the glossary actually defines terms that are relevant. So we're not going to dwell on these things, but I want us to have a view of all of the things that should feed into our deliberations. And what I'll try to do with the help of our technical advisors, John King and Mike and Scott and Nigel, I will try to make sure that we get the right technical information to help us in our deliberations, but not so much technical information that we're swamped. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing I will mention under A is the document I sent you just today. I call it work doc number 2, which is John Carter's consolidation of the 2 major parts on transportation that we find in the Reston Comprehensive Plan of 2014-15, and that is the community-wide transportation elements and the TSA specific elements. So John put them together and didn't change anything, but the benefit of it is he invites us, he forces us to look at the 2 together. And I think that is, I think the suggestion is that we use John's consolidated text as kind of the base text that we aim to modify. You know, that the end product of our task force will come to a revised version of that consolidation of those 2 parts. Does that make sense?
I think it does, John. It's a well-done document, and thanks to John Carter for, taking time to do that. It looks great to me. On your earlier points, I would agree with all that. I would say that consistently with all this is the principle of the plan that we already agreed to in the task force. And we ought to just look at those to make sure we're in sync with that, but I think we are from looking at it.
Okay.
I looked it over and I tended to agree, but I'd be interested if he expert advisors thought that there was something important that was missing from that text that we should make sure is included when we revise it, instead of just trying to update it. Just if there's any particular issues that they felt were missing that we need to address.
Thank you, Bert. And indeed, we're going to talk about that under 5C, because many of us feel that there are, in fact, things that are lacking or need to be adapted better. So that's a very important point to bring up. Thank you. I'm not trying to rush this through. I really want to hear anybody who has divergent opinions. And I hope that we do not engage in groupthink here. So if people have concerns about this approach, please let us know and we'll find a better way.
John, this is. Whoop, go ahead.
Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
Okay. I think combining in John's John Carter's piece, I think combining those things is useful. And my concern is that, and maybe it's not of any concern, but it appeared from reading that document that you sent out today that much of it was dated 2014 to 2016. And when I went into the master plan and then the Reston thing and the comprehensive plan map and all that stuff over the weekend, it appeared that everything from the county, anyway, everything from the county had been updated as of July of 2018. So I just wanted to make sure that it appeared, John's piece appears to be what I read before, but I just want to make sure that the information and data that was included in any updates by 2018 was part of his document as well.
Thank you, David. Don, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, that's simply a cut and paste of the latest plan, the 2018 plans. So it has been updated as much as it can be. But I will note that the TSA part of the comp plan was finished in 2015, and then the neighborhoods were finished later. So that's what makes up the 2018 plan. But yes, it's a cut and paste of the 2018 plan.
Okay, thank
you. And David, just to embellish on that, I think what happens is that every few years the county updates the comprehensive plan text that is presented on the website to reflect amendments that occur since the last time that they updated the text that's available on the web. And so they did that in 2018 to encompass all of the amendments up until that time that had been adopted. And so it's not, I don't believe it's different text from what was approved in 2014 and 2015. It's just they restate the comprehensive plan in a new volume every so often.
And thank you, Mark. And I want to confirm that I actually compared John's version, which is from the latest posting on the Fairfax County website, with my old copy from 2015, and nothing has been changed in the transportation sections between those two dates. So it confirms what you just said.
Right. So my question is more sort of, I guess, procedural at this point. Because I think having the two sections together in one document is useful to understand all of the topics that have been addressed in the various amendments that have been adopted in the last decade, and just get it all under one sheet of paper, onto one sheet of paper. The question is, what do we do with that now? And my experience in having done this for 20 some odd years at this point is that a task force, be it this one or one in Mount Vernon district or anywhere else, makes recommendations, writes a report, suggests changes, and then the staff develops the language that goes into it. Sometimes they agree with the task force, sometimes they disagree with the task force, and that becomes the basis for the staff report that is then transmitted to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors for consideration as part of whatever amendment is adopted. The question in my mind is, are we developing amendments? Is the intent to develop amendments to the text that's already adopted in the comprehensive plan that could be recommended to the task force, which then gets handed off to the staff to go draft up, and then that goes into the staff report that goes to the Planning Commission? Or what's the mechanism, or what's the objective in terms of the work product that we're producing at the end of the day?
Thank you, Mark. Let me give you my understanding and my memory of the flow of discussions on this very important question. We will talk more about the working group and then the task, or the task, the task force input under 5C, where we talk about an outline of transportation issues. But then you went beyond that. So we'll have a lot of input at that point. The question about who does the drafting, Walter is open to considering, I should say there's a great interest among many task force members that the task force members actually take the first crack at drafting the revision. Obviously, the county staff writes the final report to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors on these things. And but so what Walter agreed to consider it on a case-by-case basis, is the way he put it, whether it's the task force, so originally the working group and then the task force who writes the first draft, or whether, because it's so technical, we ask the county staff to write the first draft. So he at our last meeting said he would consider it on a case-by-case basis, is how he put it.
And I appreciate that. And I assume that sort of means that it's a recommendation that goes to the staff and the full task force, and then ultimately to John and to Walter. At the end of the day, I guess, sort of understanding what's in the plan now, how granular are we going to get into some of these topics? For example, the plan is replete with very detailed recommendations on the dimensions of building zones, landscape amenity panels, sidewalk widths, urban design elements for where the buildings are located in relation to the streets. Is that the level of detail, John, that you're anticipating we're going to get into, or are we going to focus on whether Lawyers Road ought to have, no bike lanes or bike lanes? In other words, what's your anticipated level of detail that we would get into in terms of reevaluating the plan language?
So this is not my decision. This is the task force's. This is the working group's decision, and then it will become the task force's decision. My own view is you mentioned some helpful categories. So some of the things you mentioned are more urban design questions, like sidewalk widths and so forth, but they have transportation implications. Other things, for example, like levels of service, is a transportation thing, and people may want to weigh in on that. So I don't think we can say ahead of time, is my view, and it's not my place in any case to say ahead of time what level of detail we will do. Obviously, the comprehensive plan has varying levels of detail. Some principles are very general, some are very specific. So I think we need to live with indefiniteness a bit, and see if, and try to find the sweet spot. And I hope that by given our broad perspectives, our varied and broad perspectives that we bring to this in the working group, that we will be able to find the sweet spot. That's my hope.
I have a couple suggestions, if I could, John.
Yes, John.
Okay. The way this comp plan was written, the Lake Ann recommendations were done first, quite a long time ago. Then the TSA area was done and in 2015, and then the neighborhoods were done. And so the comp plan today is a collection of those three. I would suggest that we take a look at combining those together as one. You'll see in the comp plan there's repetition. So for instance, the bikeways, the graphics and the text are copied almost verbatim in the neighborhood one and in the TSA's area. I would look at maybe we could look at combining them. And then I think we'll probably come up with some newer recommendations. I mean, it's 2020 versus the 2018. And I would suggest we just think about leaving open the option of us rewriting the plan. Although as we move through, we may back off from that depending on how much detail. I also would suggest that we stay out, and I think it's not in the transportation section, the urban design issue, that how close the buildings are to the street. There's probably another task force or another committee that will work on that. So that would be my suggestion. That pretty much along with what John Mooney was saying, let's just kind of let this go down the road a little bit and see how far we can go. But one of the reasons I combined all of it together is you can see it's not that complicated. There are some issues, level of service and things like that, that maybe go beyond us, but not too bad, I think. So I would suggest we leave it open with the possibility of us combining the sections and writing it ourselves. But we'll just have to see how that turns out. So those are my thoughts.
I would like to agree with John Carter's thoughts. And John Mooney, I do hope that we are able to impact some of the details in terms of the conceptual grid of streets. That is something that I think that this task force can affect for the better.
Yes, and I think that is fair play, and it's not beyond us as a group to figure that out. I don't think.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Lynn, and I hope that I was not, when I talked about using John's text as kind of the base plan that we begin with, that's not necessarily where we end up in. That sets the initial parameters or framework of our dialogue, but then we already have, remember from our various focus areas, we have other concerns, like the road to nowhere that you frequently mention, and I have many
road from nowhere.
Yeah, from nowhere to nowhere, whatever. And so the point is, we start out with John's text, the consolidation of those two transportation considerations in the plan, but that doesn't say we end there. It kind of that kind of is the initial scope. But especially when we do 5C here, where we list issues and talk about options for resolving the issues, that's where we begin to see where we want to change that base plan. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's great.
I had another thought as well, John, that I forgot to mention. The size of this, I think we ought to have a goal of cutting this way back, at least not more than half what it is today, especially if we start combining the sections, but cut it back so that we don't get into useless details. We want to get into the right details, but there are some useless ones that maybe we should consider cutting back.
Okay.
I think that's a criticism of all planning documents, I think, particularly today. They're too long. They sort of waver all over the place. They repeat. And the goal would be to cut it back and just do the essence, that the most important things get in there. So enough of that.
I was wondering, where exactly is the road to nowhere? Where does it begin? Where does it end?
It goes from Isaac Newton Square to American Dream Way through the golf course.
It is on the north side of the Washington Old Dominion Trail.
Okay.
There are a series of grids of streets drawn for each of the transit station areas, and that has a lot of detail in it. So this is the Wheelie Avenue transit station area. There are other ones as well that we might look at.
I agree.
Could I go back to John Carter's statement? I would agree with that. Cutting it back and, merging the things together also makes it easier for people to read and understand. The other thing I would just add to that, and I guess for the whole comprehensive plan itself, is to put more graphics and that kind of thing in, maps, graphics, pictures, and so forth, so people can understand this as we get through it.
Thank you, Gary. Any other comments from the members of the working group? I think at this time we've gone through a substantial part of our matter, and before we go into well, let me mention one more thing. So let me go to 5B, and then I'm going to ask some people to chime in here. So as Walter said, for the November 23rd meeting, he wants us to report, our working group, to report on our proposed work plan and timetable. So I think if we look at as I say, I think by the time we get through 5, we will have the beginning of an idea of a work plan. And when we look at items 6 and 7, which are scheduling items on the agenda, we'll have a better idea of our timetable. Does that make sense?
It does to me. This is Burton. And before we get too much farther, I just wanted to go back quickly to 5A on the connectivity versus mobility question. I think when you say connectivity, that does physical movement, which is something that mobility does indicate, to me anyway. But connectivity does get the point across about there being a purpose behind the movement. But I think I could go with mobility. I could also just be fine with transportation.
Actually, after listening to some people, Burton, I kind of was thinking, I agree with you that mobility is not the same thing as connectivity. So it would either be transportation connectivity or mobility connectivity, maybe, but we'll figure that out as we go along. So if what I'd like to do before we go to 5C, I would like to pause here and see whether any of our supporting staff from Fairfax County have anything to say, especially the folks from planning, St. Clair Lewis, and from DOT, Jeff Herman and John King. Do you guys have any reflections, any concerns, or any agreement on what we've discussed so far?
I guess I'll I'll hop in.
Is this John? Is this
I'm sorry,
John?
John King. So my one thought, and I think you've already addressed it, is just to keep in the back of everyone's minds the supervisors and the board's authorization and what they highlighted in terms of the transportation issues, which can certainly be interpreted in a number of ways and could be added to or changed as needed. But that's what I've been thinking about in terms of what our goals would be in terms of what everyone's goals would be in terms of a work product and where we're headed to. This is my thought.
Thank you, John. Jeff, anything or?
I'm just going to back up what John had said. I'm here to support him. And in case you don't know me, I'm the division chief for site analysis and transportation planning. And so John is your main point of contact. I'm here to support him. Either myself or Mike Garcia will attend as we are able to listen to the conversation and take in what you all have to say. We want to make sure you know that we are here listening and are here to provide you with the support you need to be able to make these decisions. It's a gargantuan task to look at the plan language that you have, and as John Carter said, consolidate, make sure it makes sense. I think David Vanell said it very interestingly. The other part of it is traffic engineers speak in tongues. Well, we as transportation planners are here to interpret those tongues. So hopefully we do a good job with that and can help you out in that regard. So I think you're going in a really good direction with a lot of this. And the one thing I would emphasize is to make sure that terminology is clear. We've already had kind of a little bit of a conversation of what is the road from nowhere, road to nowhere. So you may just want to have a name that makes sense. So I think it was thrown out there as the Isaac Newton to American Dreamway connector. That might be a good way, just so everyone is clear where that road is, so that when you get to that topic, everyone understands where you're on it. But some clear terminology that way will help when it comes time to writing plan language. So I'll just encourage that.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Sinclair, anything?
I don't see him on. He might have.
Okay, he may have gone. Okay, thank you. Okay, if the working group is okay, let's move into one of the more meaty parts of our agenda, and that's talking about our near-term work. So we will give.
John?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I was just noticing that it looks like Mark Malcolm, who is an attendee, has his hand raised.
Okay.
But he is muted.
That's fine. So, Lisa, could you unmute him, please?
Yep, I'll take care of that.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, thank you for spotting that.
Just a minute.
Hello?
There he is.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
If you're talking now, we can't hear you.
Okay, with this, one of the key highlighted things in the document.
Would you, pardon me, would you identify yourself again and say where you?
I'm Mark Malcolm. I'm also on the task force, but not with the working group directly. I have a focus not only of being a Ruston resident, but also being in some of the concerns that I have when looking at the transportation particularly with mobility and transportation planning, is what was mentioned before. Land use planning is not separate from transportation planning when it comes to urban streetscapes. Also, earlier, John, you had mentioned about key documents that need to be considered. One of those that I think was missing in your list is the Reston Design Guidelines that the County Board of Supervisors approved on December 2018. It's not integrated in with the comprehensive plan. And like you speaking in tongues, some of that land use planning language in that document is different from transportation planners and different from comprehensive plan language. But the key point that I want to bring forward is, in this effort, I ask that the working group consider hooks into its document with anything that concerns other planning efforts to be integrated, particularly land use planning, particularly urban streetscape planning in conjunction with mobility plans. That's the key point.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. And I made a token acknowledgement of that when I noted in the outline of John Carter's consolidated plan that I noted the places, at least in TSAs, where urban design standards overlapped with transportation issues. So, but you're mentioning it now in a broader sense, and I'm glad you reminded us of the Reston Design Guidelines. Thank you, Mark.
John, this is David Vanel. Can I interrupt for just a second? It's a tech issue.
Absolutely.
My battery charger doesn't appear to be working, and I can hang with you for a little bit longer, but if I disappear, it's because the laptop quit.
Okay.
So anyway, charge on, but I'll catch up with you later.
And you charge on, David.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Okay. Okay. I hope you find some juice. So let's talk about 5C. So once we've handed in under 5B, once we've handed in our little report on our proposed work plan and timetable, I believe our next near-term goal is to come up with a kind of a topic outline of transportation issues, which we then send to the full task force for them to bat around, agree with, disagree with, subtract from, add to. And just some, just as a way in my head, I see ordering that outline. It would be a list of issues, our guesses about their root causes, and obviously some of those issues are in Walter's authorization motion, the 3 transportation points listed there. It would be in the task force's focus areas dealing with transportation, which I alluded to earlier today. And then the second thing would be the beginning of thoughts about what would be the options for resolving those issues. And then the beginning of a pro and con analysis of the options, and then tentative preferred solutions to the issues. So, so the idea would be that this group would come up with a rough outline, which we would bring back to the task force, and they would discuss it and fill it out and refine it. So that would be our near-term issue, near-term product. At least that's how I conceive it. Does that make sense? And again, what that would do, that would make us look at the base document that John Carter has put together. It would make us look at the base document and see where the holes are, where there are outmoded parts of the base document, and oversights or errors or whatever.
I think that approach makes a lot of sense.
My only comment on it, John, is if in the first bullet where we talk about the list of issues and the root causes, My supposition is that the causes may in fact be fleshed out in the options for resolving those issues, as opposed to us independently making assumptions about what the root causes are on topics, not knowing what those topics are yet. I suspect that the analysis and investigation of whatever the causes are will be somewhat of a different dive.
Right. I agree with you, Mark. And I think there's a dialectic. You think you know what the root cause is, but when you start looking at options, you say, no, that wasn't the root cause,
Right.
So I think there's a dialectical way of approaching it.
This is Burton. Sorry to interrupt. I just was thinking similarly, John, that when we start digging into the root causes, it might turn out that the root cause is something that we really can't do much to fix, because the root is in 1960 style automobile dependent transportation and residential development planning, that we're stuck with what we have at this point, and we can't just wipe it off the mat and start from scratch.
To that point, as an example, right, there's a limited number of north-south connections that go from Leesburg Pike Route 7 in the north down to 66 in the south, right? You've got Hunter Mill Road, you've got Reston Parkway, Fairfax County Parkway. There's only a handful of routes to go north and south. And that's a problem that is not necessarily going to be fixed with this process, independent or irrespective of what we come up with. And so consequently, to Burton's point, we may never be able to solve that limitation. We can make it better, we can make it different, but we can't necessarily add a 6th or 7th or 8th north-south connection between Leesburg Pike and 95.
Okay. I hear.
And if I could just to add to Mark's and Burton's point, thinking about this and looking into the detail, we have a new world here with COVID, and what is that going to do to transportation in the short term, but also in the long term? Are people going to use, metro, so forth and so on? So looking into the future is a big thing, and I think delving into the details that Mark talked about there will help us get to look at that as well.
Okay.
I have a thought, John.
Okay. Is that Bill or is that John? John Carter or Bill Penniman?
I think it was John Carter.
Okay. John?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to leap ahead too fast, and maybe I am leaping ahead too fast. I wonder if those topics could be put in a form that would be almost the headings of the chapter, actually. Maybe that's leaping too far, but as a way of organizing the topics, to put it in almost an outline of the chapter, or maybe a first cut at the outline of the chapter. I think that would move us along. Maybe it's too fast, but I think that's my thought, is to put them put the topics like chapter headings or subchapter headings within the transportation mobility chapter.
Okay. If I may briefly respond to that, John, to me, you're talking about the relationship of 5C to 5D. So
yeah.
So 5D sounds more, what you said sounds more like how I was conceiving 5D.
Maybe.
Which is a little more polished. So 5C was, in a sense, without reference to the base document. It's kind of a list of the issues, that we see. And then in 5D, we would try to incorporate those more into, or allow those topics to modify and amend the base document. You see what I mean? So I don't want us to, my thought is I think the task force would not like it, and it would be a waste of our time to try to try to present the task force with too polished a list. I think we get an intelligible list and have them react to it, and then we're able under D to move to a more polished list. At least that's how I conceived it.
I think that works, but the existing, the chapter idea, that would allow you to be complete. So maybe you can do both at the same time, or do your topic list mindful that it's going to turn into chapter headings later on, using the document and whatever else we come up with as a way to make sure we cover all of the topics.
Okay, so I hear you, and we can try to do that.
Okay.
So I have a question, and that is, when we talk about land use and population, and we were talking about 1.83 at one point dwellings, and then it's gone up to 2.4. This has an impact also on street planning and how many people per unit we are feeling Reston should have in order to, we need to mold transportation to the number of people that we are wanting to have live in Reston.
Okay, I would just add that I agree with her. We need that kind of information. I think we're supposed to get it at the next meeting. And that helps all the efforts here of any kind, and obviously impacts transportation. So I think that's.
So you're talking about the population cap?
Yeah.
I agree.
So, but let me comment on that. The credible level of population, the comfortable level of population, has a great deal to do with how you design your community. If you have effective transit-oriented development where people live and work near and travel primarily by foot and not by car, then you can have a higher level of population. That was the design intended when the process was looked at before, was to try and strike a balance. Just picking a number, sure, if the people were spread all over the place, if they all had to drive everywhere all the time, you know, that's a different situation. But, you know, transit-oriented development is a critical assumption in all this, not just a simple big number.
And just to add to that, I mean, I don't know how you realistically control that, right? I mean, are we handing out birth control when you enter the Dulles Toll Road? I mean, I just don't know how you solve for that.
I think that you, when you're building a building, dwelling units for people that are coming in, then you want to perhaps have a cap on that will reflect in the transportation that you have for those people. I know a lot of people envision a lot of walking and a lot of mobile bus taking and everything, but I don't think that that's really happening that much. I see more and more biking to work, but I don't see that much people just walking to go to work or something. So there is going to be, there are going to be a lot of vehicles that are still in use. And if you have an idea of how many people will fit in Reston comfortably to carry the load of transportation or the egg, you know, the transportation will reflect the number of people in Reston. But the more people you have in Reston, the harder it is to get them from one place to another.
Right.
And then we have this backup, this backlog.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I guess the reality is we've invested $6.5 billion to try to tackle that problem. Right?
Mark,
I mean, yeah.
Mark,
yeah.
can I jump in?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's Walter. I just joined a few minutes ago. I just wanted to let you and Jan know and everybody that we're going to be talking about Reston's population target on Tuesday or Monday, sorry,
Monday.
the next task force meeting. So
Okay.
yeah, that's going to be the top agenda there.
Okay.
Welcome.
We can postpone the conversation till then.
Great.
Yes. But I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Any other comments on C? And we've kind of talked about D too. D is kind of a refinement after input from the whole task force. D being a refinement of C.
I just would comment that we have to have some sort of systematic approach to how we're solving this. And I think, you know, we've got to just pick a way of doing it. And I think that you've proposed a reasonable one. I did appreciate John Carter's comments too about trying to which I understood to be sort of trying to structure the topic outline to sort of align with what we think the chapter headings are going to end up being. So I would just accept what you've proposed in combination with what the other John proposed, and then suggest that we move on.
Okay. Are people comfortable with that? I
am comfortable with that. And, you know, if there's one minor change to 5CI, we could just say list of issues and their root causes where applicable. As it was pointed out, some of these we're not going to know the root causes. So
no, yeah, I clearly heard Mark and Burton and Gary's discomfort with putting too much belief in our ability to identify root causes. But if we can surmise what they might be, we'll talk about them. But I hear their skepticism, and I understand the skepticism.
Well, for example, the population is a root cause of how many cars are going back and forth in Reston.
No, and I hear you clearly too, Jan, and you know the way the Institute of Traffic Engineers do their projections. What they do is exactly what you said. They start by seeing how many, how big, and what type of buildings there are, what kind of nighttime and daytime populations they create, and then the traffic created by those populations. So what you said is absolutely true. I think Mark's question is, at this point, what can we do with it? But we will talk about what we can do with it at our next full task force meeting, Walter just promised.
Thanks, John.
And I think we were, I don't want to speak for Mark and Burton, but we're agreeing maybe with the approach here, just going into what it means a little bit, and maybe Mark can add to that.
Sorry, you caught me with an ice cube in my mouth. I mean, I guess the larger point is just that I agree that all of these things are tied together, and this is what we're trying to balance. It's what the 2010 to 2014 task force tried to balance, as Bill Penniman knows well, David Vanell knows well. You know, we tried to balance all of those things and strike the right perspective between new capacity in the road network with what we could reasonably afford to build, and then fill that capacity out with population. And people can argue as to whether we got that balance right or wrong, but we started with the premise of what's the amount of capacity that we can build into the transportation network, and let's plan accordingly based on how much we reasonably expect that we can construct. And that's always the challenge. And some of us, even at the time, quibbled as to whether that was the best approach, right? It was a number of us talked about how placemaking ought to be the principal driver for what this looks like. And then based on the type of community you wanted to have and the right placemaking, then you can figure out what infrastructure you needed to be able to support that. That's not traditionally how the county has planned things. The county has planned things by figuring out how much capacity it has in its road network, its school network, and other critical infrastructure, and then building a comprehensive plan that assumes that capacity is in place at the end of the 40-year planning horizon. And a number of us, going back almost a decade, were saying, that's the wrong conversation to have. So even in the last plan, we debated and discussed all of these various things as to how to strike the right balance. And I think that's all we're talking about is, making sure that we strike the right balance with these things. And it's a different set of players and a different set of perspectives. And, Penniman and David Gill and Vanell and I are, the old guys at the table with all of this stuff, because we've seen this movie once before. And so that's why we probably look at it a little bit differently than the people that weren't part of that conversation, because we spent 4 years of our life debating those very things the last time around.
Thanks, Mo.
Yeah, if the roads were designed so that there was never any traffic, that would be very, very wasteful, because we'd have much bigger roads than would really make sense. And if we, the goal should not be to have zero traffic. If we wanted to have zero traffic, we could accomplish that with a nuclear bomb, but then there would be no people. There would be, we would be doing nothing to help the people who live here or the people who will live here in the future.
No, this is a no nuke zone. Thank you, Bert.
I don't think that that's a problem right now. I think right now there are roads that are all being used around Reston.
Actually, if I could just add,
go ahead.
If I could just one thing that needs to be factored in there too is the post-COVID world, because it's pretty clear. Well, first place, we can all see there isn't much traffic right now, most of the day, because people are working from home. That'll change some, but it's unlikely in my mind that everybody's going back to commuting the way they used to. Working from home is going to be much more practice. So, old models just are going to apply, at least for the next decade.
Thanks, Bill.
I would agree with that. I think as I mentioned before, I think we need to think about that as we go through this.
Yep.
I think we're all on the same page, really.
Yep. Okay, if we can move to 5C, which is really, I call it the completion phase, where Walter, based on recommendations from our group and the full task force, assigns the text drafting responsibility to a drafting committee of our working group, or to county staff, or to some sort of joint working group staff drafting committee. And then the full task force discusses it and tries to achieve substantial consensus. And then then the designated drafting committee prepares final text. So something like that. So here's what I propose. I've taken notes, and I will go back if necessary and listen to our discussion. But what I propose to do is try to write up all of our discussion on 5 in brief form and tell Walter, this is our work plan. Are you okay with that? So there's no way we're going to be able to draft the text in committee tonight. Would you trust me, or allow me at least to try to make a run at summarizing our discussion on all these points under point 5?
I'm fine with that.
I would trust you, John. This is Burton.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree.
And then I would ask for your critiques or comments, and I'll try to refine it so that we have something to give to Walter on the 23rd. Is that acceptable to the group?
Sounds good.
Is there any objection to that? Okay, thank you. So number 6 is an information point. These are our next scheduled meetings of the full task force.
Can we go back to 5?
Sure.
The way I see it, I think it had been mentioned at the last full task force, is that we as a group draft an outline and use language, and then we take it to the full task force before taking it to the staff, so that the full task force has a way to interject their thoughts and their wording, and then the staff can do their stuff.
And Jan, that's exactly what that's what point C is. So it's point C is the near-term thing, and that's where we do an outline and have the full task force discuss it.
Good.
Before we even start drafting anything.
Yeah, good.
So number 6 are the lists that I got from Jose of the next full meetings of the full task force. So keep that in mind. That's information. And now let's look at 7. Let's talk about the date and agenda for the next working group meeting. I would hope that we can do it before December 14th. And then I would invite us to have a brief but honest discussion about the time of the meetings, the pace of the meetings. So do we meet every other week? Do we have the time and energy to do it every week? That's a lot. But do we do it every other week? Let's say the week in between the regular task force meetings. That would be my preference. What time is best? I set it at 7, but should we set it earlier? I don't think we want to set it later. And the length of the meeting. So I allowed for 2 hours. I hope we can finish shorter than 2 hours. So what I would hope myself is that we would have another working group meeting before December 14th, where we would prepare that outline we talked about in 5C, and that we would then determine again the time, dates, and pace of our meetings subsequently. So let me hear what you're thinking about.
I like 7 p.m. as a time, and I think it makes sense to meet every other week, those being the weeks that we're not meeting as a task force. The coordination of meeting times, if we narrow it down to 7 p.m., then it's just a question of which day it is. But the emails to the entire listserv, I'm not sure is the best way of setting up a meeting that works for us. And there's online tools that some of which are free, such as Doodle, which have a poll-like interface that allows for a consensus to emerge without a flurry of emails. And I subscribe to a service that automates meeting time agreement. It's just that I would need, or someone would need to have the actual email addresses of the working group members. But we could also just continue to do it the way that we've been doing it, or agree to a time right now.
I vote for continuing to do it the way we've been doing it, rather than getting into applications.
If John, if I could add my 2 cents, for those of us who have full-time jobs during the day, I think that this schedule is quite manageable, and I think the 7 to 9 time frame certainly works within my free time.
Okay. So there's a building consensus, but not a definitive consensus to do it every other week, to do it from 7 to 9.
And on Tuesdays, right?
Actually, I was about to urge the same thing. Of all the days of the week, those tend to be the best for me.
Tuesdays?
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Tuesdays are good for me as well.
Tuesdays are not good for me. I lead a couple of meetings on Tuesdays.
Yeah, Mondays are terrible too, and so it just we're not going to have perfection.
John, whatever works for you. You're doing all the heavy lifting here, Mr. Manning.
Actually, if most people can make a Tuesday, then I think that's fine. I think I'll only be missing one in a month.
Okay, well, that's not too bad. And Jan, I promise to keep you filled in, and I will invite your. Hopefully, my idea is to get the agenda out and to get the read-aheads out in sufficient time ahead so that people have time to formulate their thoughts. You could send your thoughts ahead of time to me if you're going to have to miss a meeting, okay?
Right, thank you.
So,
and John, I don't know if you saw Jennifer Chuck's chat, but she said that the 7 to 9 works for her.
Okay.
And the off, yeah, this is good for her as well.
Okay, so if we have the intervening week from and is Tuesday workable for most people? I'm usually killed by meetings on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Oh, wow.
No, Tuesday's good.
How about the other folks?
Tuesday's good for me.
Works for me.
Tuesday's fine by me.
Is there anyone for whom Tuesday does not work except for Jan once a month? Okay, so what I will do is I will also send out, when I send out the draft work plan, I will say that I will ask everybody to, or I will send out the proposed dates. So every other week from 7 to 9 on a Tuesday, okay? Okay. So the only thing now, so we've agreed in some stable form of the work plan that we're going to propose to Walter on the 23rd, contingent upon your approval of my write-up. We have the dates on which we're meeting, and then what we would need to do would be to say, okay, when are we going back to number 5, when do we hope to complete the near term outcome we want, namely the topic outline of issues, and when do we think we can begin the midterm, and when might we be able to do the completion phase? Now, I cannot see us completing the near-term thing without at least 2 meetings with the full task force. How about you guys?
More.
Let me hear you all. So Bill says more than 2. Again, Bill.
2 should be enough for me.
What's that, Gary?
I would say 2 sounds good.
Let me ask a question, just again, process, and maybe I've directed it at Jeff Herman or somebody on staff, but maybe John King can answer the question. What resources do you guys have at your disposal to help analyze different situations with all of this? In the last task force, you all had staff had a consultant, an outside consultant that you were utilizing to run modeling exercises based on certain assumptions about land use and mixes of land uses and capacity within the network, et cetera. Do you have that same level of resources here that could be brought to bear in these discussions, or is it, are you doing this in-house, and if so, what capabilities come with that? Because I think the answer to the timing question is largely driven by what is it that we're asking. I think we describe them as our outside helpers to analyze with respect to these policy choices versus us kind of spitballing what we think they are and making certain assumptions about if you take this action, these are the results. If you take that action, the results are different. And I guess the question is, what's the depth of assistance that you guys anticipate providing?
So I'll respond first, but Jeff can certainly hop in. My understanding is that we do not have a budget for a consultant at this time. In terms of what we can do, we spitballed some ideas about ways to look at that. I think it was the third topic area about transportation improvements and whether they're sufficient. But that would not be the type of detailed analytical work that we've done in the past. It could be more of sort of the we look at what's been built so far, what's been proffered. We basically make an inventory of what's out there, and we go through it with the group. It's something like that. Not using outside resources, but I'll defer to Jeff in terms of what's available.
Yeah, John kind of hit the nail on the head. We don't have additional outside resources at the time. We don't have a budget for it that's been approved. So kind of what I've heard is that there are some maybe policy or reorganization type discussion that's going on with the plan language. That might be a good way to frame it. There's as John mentioned, there's the 4 items that of the list of 18, and when we look at those, monitoring is something that we certainly can address, and I think I've started to do the transportation improvements. I think there's some ways maybe by policy that we can address those without too much of a intensive technical discussion or analysis. Some of the pedestrian and bicycle facilities and mobility and transportation design, I think, really gets to a discussion of what's happening with the development and zoning cases and how those are influenced by the various documents and reference documents that you all have talked about. So to sum up, we don't really have a coffer, if you will, to help address those things. But that being said, we're here to offer what resources we do have, which is us, staff time. So if that helps, we're here.
Thank you, Jeff and John. And let me point out again that we do have 2 very talented and generous planning or transportation professionals, Scott Leary and Nigel Astle, on our MTAC. And what I would like to do is see how they might collaborate with John King on some of these things. So if you're comfortable with that, Jeff.
I mean, I think there will be some of that we can do. It's going to depend on the level of effort of what they're willing to take on as well. And I wouldn't want to put a big burden on them as well. This could snowball rather quickly, and so I would hate to look to Scott or Nigel and say, hey, take on a really large cube modeling assessment of something when they're saying, well, that maybe is a little bit too large and out of the scope. Right. So we'd have to. It's going to have to depend on the the specific topic, and maybe we can wrestle that in a little bit once we have those topics ironed out.
I think so. I think.
John?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
Sorry, I had one question, and I guess it deals more with the other end of the spectrum of what our staff, Jeff and John, are dealing with in terms of any mandates that might be coming to the Virginia Department or the Fairfax County Department of Transportation from the state in terms of new funding cuts as a result of COVID, and how we in Fairfax County, but Hunter Mill in particular, might be looking at adjusting our attitudes towards funding for projects.
I can speak to that a little bit. So the funding picture is a very complicated one. As I think was alluded to, the Reston funding plan, which Tom Bashadny has presented a couple times, does have a big draft on it because that changes. He likes to call it the colors of money, you know. And so like there's so many different colors of money that we can choose when it comes to prioritizing a project. And it's a really great analogy because on the yearly basis, on a more than a yearly basis, we're looking at all of these different funding sources that do change depending on budget cycles and things like that. And so I wouldn't want us to get too mired into those details because we're really good at juggling all of those balls in the air at the same time of figuring out where those funding sources are coming from and then applying them to the priorities of the comprehensive plan, of the responding to the development and that's occurring in Reston and other places in the county. So I would hate for us to go down a path to say that that's going to drive where we go with it, but yeah.
No, but I know I mean, Hunter Mill is not your only district.
Sure, so. But it's only one of our 9 important ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So we have meeting dates and times. So we're still talking about when we would hope to be able to deliver our topic outline, which we call our near-term work product. And 2 meetings have been suggested. 2 meetings with the task force. Bill Penniman is skeptical about that. So why don't we say? Are we comfortable saying we think we can achieve our near-term work product timetable in 2 to 3 meetings? Are people okay with that?
Why don't you hope to?
Yeah.
So are you looking?
We will use that wonderful word target.
I
think we should be more determined to personally.
What's that?
I think we should be more determined to personally.
Yeah, I think since this was meeting 1, that it may go to 2 to 3, but I have a feeling it might be 3. Otherwise, we're doing everything at our second meeting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we can say that our target is 2 weeks, but we can see how it might extend to 3. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that 2 weeks or
you said 2 meetings, not 2 weeks, right?
No, sorry, not weeks. 2. I meant 2 meetings, John. You're right. And two meetings with the full task force.
Yes. At least.
Okay, and midterm, God knows.
Just in your memo, John.
Yeah, God knows. Okay, I will do that. I think we would be. My French Canadian mother-in-law had a saying. I hope you won't be offended. But she was a very practical woman and a very outspoken woman. And when people were doing something useless, she would say, "That's about as useful as cutting assholes out of teddy bears." So we do We do not want to be cutting orifices for teddy bears tonight. So anyway, there's a saltiness to the French Canadians.
So John,
Okay.
does that mean we're looking at January the 5th?
If our next task force, let's see.
Next
So,
task force would be on the 8th of December.
So I think what we're saying is that we would hope to wrap up. We would hope to wrap up the near term. We would hope to wrap up the midterm project on January the 11th.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, is that,
I'm sorry, wrap up the which?
is that near term or that's the near term, right?
So the near term, we want to deliver that on the 23rd. Oh, pardon me. You're right. I'm off.
Yeah, the near,
So
right.
the
We're gonna
11th
do,
would be the task force.
we would deliver the outline on December 14th.
Okay.
How many meetings?
Say that again.
How many meetings between now and then? Which dates?
So the question is, dare we meet between the holidays and December 14th?
Yeah, I think December the 8th is a reasonable.
Pardon me. I did that poorly. Between the task force meeting on December the 14th and the holidays, would our group meet again?
Not a fan.
Well, John, could you just clarify? We've talked about Tuesdays, but I guess I didn't know if we'd actually picked which Tuesdays. Do you have a calendar in mind?
It would be the Bill, I would write that out, but basically it's the intervening Tuesday between the weeks that we have task force meetings.
December 22nd.
Right.
December.
And I know already that doesn't work for me, but that doesn't stop people from doing it. I just know it doesn't work for me.
and that's gonna be a hard date for me too.
And yeah, it's a hard time. It's during the celebration of Hanukkah. I don't know who might be observing that, but it's during Hanukkah. It's the run up to Christmas.
Could I just ask for clarity? Yeah. Are you saying our next meeting would be December 1st?
Hey,
that's exactly right, Bill.
Okay, so that's one meeting.
Pardon me. It would be
December
8th. How many weeks is it between task force meetings?
Two.
So we would meet. That would mean we would meet on November 30th.
That's a Monday.
December 1st.
I'm sorry, December 1st. December 1st, exactly right.
Okay. So, and then what's our next meeting after that?
After December 1st?
The 15th.
Which is the day after the task force meeting.
Right. Oh, yeah, after.
Are we okay with that, December 1st and December 15th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're not going to deliver anything December 14th. We're not going to deliver anything until January 11th because there won't be anything until then.
Here's the question. Could we, on December 1st, prepare an outline of issues for discussion by the task force on the 14th?
I mean, if you just want a list of issues, which could be from 3 to 33 long, with no input on our part as to what they mean, what the background is, why we think, just a list of issues. We can come up with all sorts of lists of issues, but I'm not sure that's informative if it's just a list.
It wouldn't be not mature enough, eh? No, I mean that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think Bill's right.
This is complicated stuff.
I don't know how we do a quality list in that one meeting.
Yeah, we don't want to waste the task force's time. I think we need to come up with something that has some rational structure to it. So probably we would deliver. Are people comfortable saying we would deliver our outline of issues on December 15th?
I am comfortable with that. And if needed, I could meet not only on December the 1st, but I could also meet the following week on the 8th. If there are things that we need to discuss and work through.
No, I could not meet on the 8th. I'm leading meeting that day. So that'd be two I miss.
Okay.
Okay. First.
It would be nice. It would be good. It would be more than nice. Nice is an anemic word. It would be good. So we will have had a meeting on December 1st when we will begin work on this outline of issues.
Great.
The next task force meeting is on the 14th. It would be good if we could have another meeting before the 14th. So we meet on the 1st, another meeting before the 14th, where we can prepare our report. Should we try to look for a date when we could do that?
I think we met last week, we're meeting this week, we'll be meeting next week, we'll be meeting the following week, we'll meet the following week and the following week, right? That's a lot in a row to me.
Yeah, so we're okay with meeting December 1st.
Yes.
The next task force meeting is the 14th. If we met before the 14th, I would resist personally meeting also on December 15th. So it would be December 1st and some intervening date between then and the 14th.
Are we not meeting between the 14th and the next meeting, January 11th, right? So if we meet all these weeks in a row, then we would have a hiatus a little bit after that.
Well,
Is that what you're saying, John?
No, I myself, Gary, would support, I would resist because I think it just gets into holiday plans too much.
Right.
To try to meet between the 15th and the first week of January. But I could see us working, I could see us meeting before January the 11th, Let's do this. Let's not try to do calendar at this hour, okay? I will send out some ideas and ask people to respond to these, okay? Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, John, for your patience and leadership.
Yes.
Thank you, and thank you for working so hard today. Is there any additional business that we need to cover?
I move we adjourn.
Can I bring up one thing?
Sure, Gary. Sure.
So last night, John and I were in the Reston Transportation Service District Advisory Board meeting. And the one thing, we have material from that meeting that might be useful, but there was a 100-mile district project report that is a useful report that they weren't able to get to us before the meeting. That's from back in August. They're going to send that out to us. I think, John, if you agree, I can get that, or you could get it and send it to everybody. It's just a useful status of all the things going on in Hunter Mill, and the majority of that is in Reston. It tells you all the projects and so forth, and what their status is, and so forth and so on. So I would propose.
Would you mind doing that? Would you mind doing
I'll
that?
take care of that.
Is this the August report or the September report?
That hasn't, they weren't able to get to us, they're gonna send to us, I assume.
All right, I can send that to you. I'll send that to you. Or to John. I'll send it to John and then he can send it out to everybody.
Well, they didn't have it last night. They didn't.
Shamley has it.
Shamley has it?
Or you'll get it, Shamley.
Yep.
Okay, that wonderful. Thank you. Now, I heard some wonderful person named Lynn make a motion.
Just waiting for a second.
I seconded that a long time ago.
Okay. Anybody who votes nay will be shot. Everybody who says yay. Yay.
Yay. Great job, John.
Thank you, everyone.
Fabulous
Great
job.
job for the committee. I think we did a lot of work.